Hello, Kit, and welcome to your first Photoshop tutorial. So this is the image that you drew. This is in its original form, and I'm going to show you how I did the lighting on it. So we're going to go from this to what I showed you before, the dynamic lighting like this. Pretty simple. I should be able to show you in only a couple minutes here. So let's go ahead and look at this group of collapse layers that I made into a layer group real quick to show you, how I can make it look like the lights are turning on and off. Um, so if you drop this down, I've got quite a few different layers here where I've split up the light and shadows into different sections. So let me go ahead and hide all those real quick. There we go, back to the original image. And then I'm going to kind of drop them in one by one. So first, starting with the girl over here on the stairs, I'm going to drop in one shadow layer. Oh, sorry, that was in the back room there. So to make it look like there's some depth, that the lighting recedes as you go back into the tavern, I dropped in a shadow over this part of the tavern. I kept in the perspective line of the floor right there to give it a little bit more of a glow from the light above, to make it look like the light is hitting the floor. And I didn't like it. I thought it was not quite dark enough, so I put another layer over the top to make it even darker in the back. That way, you're in the foreground. It doesn't get muddled around the two figures and the lamp. Without that, it's almost all the same kind of medium tone. Um, and now we can see this is more in the foreground. Next is the illumination around the lamp on the door frame. So wherever the lighting is, the closest surfaces to it would be the same tone um, and shape. So really quick, I'll hide these real quick and I'll show you how I did that. So these three layers, if you look up here in this setting, they're on soft light. I believe all three of them are on soft light. Um, that way you can just paint in a straight yellow or straight black, and then doing the soft light makes it kind of almost like overlay on top of all of the details that you've got. So it's not just a blob, basically. And you can do these on the same layer if you're using the same filter. So I'm just going to make a new layer real quick, and I'm going to grab my paintbrush. We'll flip around to the black real quick. Make sure my brush size, opacity, and feathering are enough. There's a quick shortcut on the keyboard. You can hit the left and right bracket to increase and decrease the size of the paintbrush. So using those brackets, I'm just going to go ahead and paint right now. Using black, I'm just going to paint in around the light right here. And I'm not going to do this completely detailed here. Obviously, we'd want a smaller brush size to be able to get into these nooks and crannies. Um, and we probably want to zoom in and get as close as possible to the actual edge. I'm just going to do it kind of sloppy right now, just to illustrate what we're doing. Okay, once we get this all filled in, get behind the stool there. And again, it doesn't have to be perfect. Do that, and then I'm going to take the eraser, and to get that perspective line, we're just going to go whoop, just like that, and erase out. There we go, there's my dark shadow, and now I just drop it down into soft light, and you get that effect. If it's not dark enough, then all you have to do is duplicate the layer, and there you go, it's darker. You can still see some of the outlines in the background. Now, if it's too dark and you lose too much of your detail, you can just change the opacity down. So we can go to about like maybe 40, 50%, something like that. And then you can feather edges with the eraser tool or whatever you want to do from there. So I'll go ahead and delete those real quick. All right, so now for the light, the highlight around the lamp, we'll go ahead and turn that off. We'll make a new layer. We're going to do the same deal with the soft light setting, but now we're going to choose a new color. So I'm going to use the eyedropper, and let's pull a nice yellow from this candle, one of the most intense yellows that you've got, and we're just going to paint that onto the door frame. Let's go ahead and zoom in. Go. You don't even have to use the paintbrush if it's too much work. You can just use the direct selection tool, and you can select those areas, especially if they are geometric, angular shapes. and then you can get a complete fill of the area. The key command to fill is Shift Backspace, and then just make sure the foreground color is selected and hit OK or Enter, and it'll fill. We'll go in and do another one on the other side here. And we can just keep on going all the way down that door frame around this gentleman's beard. And while it's selected, if I hold down the Shift key, you see the little plus sign appears? That means I can add to that shape, and I can keep going. There we go. There's my selection of the door frame. Just hit Shift Backspace and Enter. And there's my yellow. Put it in soft light. And there we go. There's our illumination on the door frame. Now you can see up here we went outside the line a little bit. All you have to do is clean it up a little bit with the eraser tool. There we go. And we zoom out. And there's your illumination. We'll go ahead and drop in the backdrop too. And there you go. So that's how you do that dynamic lighting. There's more effects and things you can do, but just think about where your light sources are. So we've got one right here. We've got the chandelier up top, and then we've got the fireplace over here on the side. So all light in this space is generated from these three positions. So think about where your shadows would be. So this one, you would have shadows going this direction from where they're hitting the edge of the chandelier and casting shadows on the walls. And then you'd also have it shining downward, and you'd have it creating a circular shadow with those chains near the floor and on top of the bar. The fireplace would be shining its firelight underneath the table and somewhat on top as well, but everything else in the foreground would be in shadow because of that. But edges where you've done highlights already, we can accentuate that and give them more of an orange light so it looks like firelight. And then, of course, the lamp over here, we might have a reflection, or not a reflection, a shadow of the chain right here. And then because of the angle, we would actually have a shadow casting on the ceiling of the skull right here. And then some of this light also would reflect over onto the stairwell. But really, the stairwell isn't as important. You might just want to do some shadows on the bottom of the stairs to show that the light is hitting the top of them, just to give it a little bit of contrast and a little bit more dynamic lighting. So if we add those back in, there's our door frame. I've done the chandelier on the floor. Um, Added a little bit of a shadow to half of the wizard here. Made it a little darker. Put her in shadow as well. Give her a little bit more of a rogue-like feel. The same thing with the inside of the banister, since there's no light shining on it. Um, the beams on the ceilings, put some little shadows in there. Highlights now. Highlights I've put just about everywhere over the beams. On most of the people, they have highlights on the surfaces that are closest to the lighting. Um, and then the firelight, we've added oranges over here to show that there's a fire burning in the corner. Shadows on the edges of the bookshelves. Um, and then, yeah, I darkened everybody down here beneath their feet, made their shadows. And the axe is casting against here. We've got our chain and the skull up here. Um, and then some little details. I had done this on the wall to show where the chandelier was casting a shadow, but I actually didn't like it. I removed it. I thought it was a little bit too busy. Added a little bit more texture to the fire. Bottles, the shadows of the bottles. And then finally some little details on the edges of people. And there you go. That's it. So hope you enjoyed this little tutorial. I hope that it helps you out. So let me know if you have any questions. Thank you for watching.